Here we are with Sex Witch, Sexuality Guide, Tantra Educator, Artist. What else? What else goes there?
Oh God. Facilitator, ritual lover,
Yeah.
dog lover. Yeah.
Shaney
Many
Marie.
things.
Shaney Marie Simpson. How you doing?
Hi. Good. Good. It's good to
Awesome.
be here with you.
Likewise. Thanks for sharing your time and energy with us. You look really happy. Like in a good place.
Yeah, I got up and went for a run this morning, and I feel like pumped for life. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Look, so the good times with Mum have worn off for the effects of the good times.
Yeah, too much wine.
You've been hanging out with Mama. Is she a bad influence on you or a good influence?
She loves her wine, loves a good drink, and I'm not much of a drinker, so it hits me pretty hard. But
you got to keep up with her.
Yeah, but it was beautiful. Lots of fun. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
So is that something that's big for you? Is it I don't know the pronunciation. Is it Wanau?
Wanau?
Wanau? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. I live in Australia, and all my family lives in New Zealand. I have a brother and sister here, though. And yeah, I don't get to see them enough, but when I do, it's really, really beautiful. And last time I saw my mum, she came to Mexico and stayed with me, and it was a trip of a lifetime for her. So yeah.
So your
I'm a bit of I do things in immersion style, like whether it's like learning or like catching up with friends or families. It's like I tend to do things in really condensed moments, and I don't do anything for ages, and then I'll do it. Yeah.
Is that something that you've always done since a child, or is it something that's come it's in your adulthood?
More in my adulthood, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
So how does one become a sex witch?
Well, Sex Witch is interesting because it's a project that I created with my beautiful friend Winter Isley, and it's really about combining the world of sexuality with the world of magic, because they're really woven together, and a lot of traditional magical arts have kind of eliminated the sexuality part. And so we really kind of just mashed our wisdoms together. I brought a lot of the sexuality stuff, and Winter brought a lot of the witchcraft, and we threw our ideas around. And the Sex Witch project is really cool because it's like we can get away with anything. It's a bit of a sideshow, actually. It's like it's because magic is all about imagination. It's like what you can imagine. You imagine like a plant turning into like some creature, or your lover being some like, I don't know, wizard, and they're like, channeling into you like the magic of existence, or so. It's like there's no boundaries with magic, and that's what I love so much about it. Is it's very childlike in its imaginary ways. You can create whatever you want, really.
and what kind of what does the work entail? Like what does one do with sex witchery?
Yeah. Well, you're using a lot of sex magic, so utilizing your sexual energy to weave into rituals and processes. It's a way of transforming and discovering different parts of ourselves, and through that, it's always the acknowledgement of our sexuality, because that's where the tantric kind of stuff comes in as well. It's very much founded on this idea that sexual energy infiltrates everything, because we are created from that energy. So so it's just the full embrace of our sexuality as a transformational tool.
Okay. And there's some, I'd love you to maybe touch on like some of the myths about Tantra and this kind of, I don't know, new age kind of there's a lot of people have ideas. They hear Tantra and they have ideas like Kama Sutra. Is that, like that's what they're mind. Like, I don't know. I don't really want to use the word dispel, but maybe just touch on some of these kind of ideas that people may have who have no real idea about it. And so what's been your experience with it, and from what your understanding of it is?
It's important to acknowledge that any tantra that I'm working with or teaching, and most of my peers, we're working with a modern contemporary form of tantra, and tantra as a whole is like huge, and sexuality part is like a tiny snippet of the whole kind of philosophy. Tantra goes into astrology, into art, into food. Like it encompasses every kind of field of existence.
Is it true that translation means like web? It means
to weave.
Yeah.
Roughly. To like weave with life, and the way I think of tantra is I look at the I've got this book on space, and there's an image in it that it's like the furthest image they've ever captured of like the deepest part of space.
Have you got that book? Can you show us?
Oh, it's down in the lounge. I'll send you a picture. It's called Cosmos. It's huge. It's like this big.
Yeah, take a photo of it, and I'll see if I can include it.
Yeah. And this image is like, it looks pretty much like the flesh within our bodies. So you go out to the deepest part of space, and it looks like you're actually looking back inside yourself. And that very much kind of like speaks to me of what Tantra is. It's like Tantra is exploring the microcosm of the macrocosm of the macrocosm of the microcosm. It's like, and that's the weaving. It's like weaving through life and looking at like the physics and the quantum and playing with like all of existence. I don't know if that's too spacey, but it's like, that is my feeling of Tantra. It's like, and how that comes into sex is you're weaving your energy and your being and your life and everything with your lover in that moment. And it creates this like profound sense of existence. Yeah. That made sense.
Just in a nutshell.
Yeah. But in its kind of most basic understanding, Tantra and is the acknowledgement of how our hearts are like this fucking incredible organ. They have the strongest electromagnetic field of any other organ in our body, and it's like, it's such a cliche. It's like, love and just love and all of this, but it's like, no, just fucking like love and learn about your heart and feel your heart and see through your heart and feel the divine through your heart, and that transforms everything. Yeah.
In what way? Like, it transforms it? Does it make it all just like, I don't know if... Yeah, I can see some people who get really triggered by this stuff, who really brings up stuff because, there's tons of issues around sex and taboo. And, it's, if you look at church society, some of these ideas around, everything's not about sex, or, so what kind of transformation comes up? Or how does it transform everything, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, well, the heart is like an alchemy tool. So everything that moves through the heart goes through this like alchemical process of transformation, in a way. And so it's very easy, and we see this like all around us, of how easy it is to disconnect from our heart space. Yeah, it's like easy. We just have to kind of get on with life. Yeah, but when we like connect to our heart, and it's like everything around, it's like a ripple effect. If that makes sense. It's like I watch myself in moments where I feel like myself disconnect from my heart. So let's say I'm in a conversation with someone and I disconnect, and that creates a disconnect in them. And then it's like this these unfolding events that end up kind of deteriorating any sort of form of connection. And then as soon as I bring my presence back into my heart, the whole experience, does that make sense? So it's like this tool that we have that we are able to tap into momentarily that can it really like just transforms our existence and everything around us. It's like a butterfly effect.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There you go. Here is Ion.
Cutie.
Awesome. So yeah, maybe share with us some of your journey, like how you got to where you are now. Just a quick like overview of how you got
quick overview.
Yeah.
Gosh, where to start? So when I was quite a rebellious teenager, and I ended up with a young boy who was really violent with me when I was 16.
Is this in NZ?
Yeah, and that really kind of that really set me on a path of reclaiming my power as a woman. And the day I turned 18, I walked into a strip club and got a job there, and it was kind of like this version of liberation. And that gave me a lot of freedom because it gave me money and gave me a sense of empowerment. And I then from there, about 8 months later, I moved to Australia, and I worked as a stripper for almost, I guess, like 8 years, and it took me around the world. And I found that I was just a lot of the men were coming into strip clubs to look for connection, and I ended up kind of being like a bit of a therapist. Like I'd find myself sitting on the couch with men, and they really just seemed to want a place where they could be heard. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to be a sex therapist. Like that seems like the next kind of step. And then I started to read a lot of books on different kind of sex therapists, and I contacted people like Betty Dodson and got their advice, and it became clear to me like the kind of mainstream route of sex therapy felt a bit dry for me. And it was all about like all these books and everything were about like, oh, get this toy or dress in this lingerie or have this orgasm or and it felt somewhat superficial. And then I went to a tantra workshop from the Australian School of Tantra, Kerry and Diane Riley. They were my first teachers, and it was the heart. I participated in their workshop, and I was like, oh my God, this is what is missing. It was so heart-centered and devotional that I was like, this is it. And so I journeyed. I went on this alternative path and immersed myself in the tantra world and learned all I could. And then I started to create more, and I worked with men one-on-one for a few years, and really got insight. And then and then now I'm kind of here. I also do some work with where I teach women about men from everything that I learned over that time of working with men as a tantrika. So.
And what was it like coming up in the strip club? You said a lot of men were just looking for connection. Did you feel that empowerment? Did you feel like you got what you were looking for in that? Reclaiming the power, and you felt really powerful and in your womanhood. And
look, to the level of consciousness that I had, yes, it gave me what I needed until a certain point. And then it was like, no, this isn't actually true empowerment. This isn't actually true liberation, because it's strip clubs are set up on the dynamic of power. and it's a power overplay. So the woman having power over men, and the men having power over women, and it's this negotiation of power over. It's not an equal playing field. Yeah. And playing with power is an important thing to do. You know, it's hard. It creates polarity, but the way that those clubs are set up isn't necessarily full liberation.
And what go on.
And it creates like a pattern of men against women.
It's like a more of a divisive type undercurrent.
Yeah.
And what would you, like, knowing what you know now with that experience, what would you love to kind of share with your 18-year-old self, or your 22-year-old self, or, you know, as you go through the ages? Is there anything you'd like, you know, just a message you'd like to share of your experience with others, you know, in that similar situations?
It would probably be to stay curious and keep exploring, because everything that happened there was perfect for me. Yeah, like one thing led to another thing, led to another thing. But if I had the mentality of kind of getting stuck, or not being curious, or kind of settling for that world, then it would have been limiting. So yeah, to stay curious and keep exploring always.
So like doing what you did, like that works.
Exactly.
For you.
Yeah. I had a great time. It was awesome. it was you know, it gave me a lot. Like, I wouldn't be where I am without it. And I love erotic dance, and it taught me how to really be in my body. It showed me where I turned myself off versus turned myself on, because you're playing with that. You know, you're dancing for someone, and you're simulating eroticism, or you're actually in your eroticism.
And from like the
so
go ahead. So just getting a bit of lag. Go ahead.
I wasn't saying anything.
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of with the work that you do share with women and men, maybe we'll start with one and then go to the other. What are some of the common, I guess, situations or experiences that people are experiencing when when you come to them, and how specifically do you work with people, and sort of what are the, I guess what I'm asking is, when people come to you, they have XYZ issue, problem, challenge, and then when they leave, they're more able to, you know, ABC. What does that look like in terms of your work with men and your work with women?
I would say the most common tone or issue that comes through is the limitation of what people perceive as erotic, and that our souls know that there's more, and our bodies know that there's more than what we've kind of been conditioned to experience. So really, like, a lot of my work is about expanding people's understandings and perspectives of what they can create for themselves. And then within that as well, there's always this kind of there's a lot of trauma. There's a lot of trauma and stuckness and armoring that they often need support to loosen up and let go of. And I'd say, like, the limiting perspectives on what eroticism is.
So what does that look like in terms of these limiting perspectives? What does that sound like, look like? What kind of things do you hear? What kind of things do you see? And then before the fact and then after the fact of doing the work, what does it look like after?
I'd say, like, it comes up as expectations that they're supposed to be experiencing sex a certain way. They're supposed to be orgasmic. They're supposed to last long. They're supposed to be filled with desire. They're supposed to get the right partner, and there's all these kind of expectations on how they should be experiencing themselves. And I guess the way that I work with that is we explore, like, how to how to kind of release those expectations as well as the old habits, because we get stuck in these like habitual patterns no matter what area of life. But you know, I'm working with sexuality, so people have their sexual habits of how they.
What kind of things are we talking? Like, give me an example.
Like orgasming.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a particular pattern. I know that when I touch my clitoris in this way, I will get a tension experience and then release. And that is my habit, and that is my go-to.
Mm-hmm.
And often that will leave a person feeling a bit disenchanted after some time. It's like, oh, it feels like there's more, but I don't know what that more is, because I don't have a conceptual understanding of what that looks like. What is the framework for my possibilities in an orgasmic and embodied sense? So we explore like how a person can really surrender more deeply to pleasure, and explore different ways that a person can be orgasmic and less reliant on the orgasm. And again, it always comes back into the heart, because a lot of things that people are experiencing is this disconnect from their hearts. It's like, oh, the sex is separate from the heart space. I do this with my sex, and then my heart is like something I feel for my family, or they're not so woven together. And that's really like the foundation of my work, is weaving the heart and the sex together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so it's becoming, it's sort of, you mentioned de-armoring as well. Like what is that part of that process? Is like there's these armors that create those habits?
Yeah. And there's like pain and trauma and patterns that create certain ways that our bodies respond, either shutting down or opening. And so we go into places that perhaps feel armored or shut down, and we explore how to open that place more, so that we can really allow like energetic flow through the whole being. Because any sort of armoring or blocks is it's limiting our life force. Our kundalini, and our life force is our path to liberation. Yeah, when we're able to experience energy flowing through us, and be sensitized to that energy. Because what we have in the world is people addicted to big experiences. So that shows up massively in sex. You just look at porn, it's like just stretching more and more, like, you know, extreme experiences, because people are so disconnected from the subtleties of their lives. Yeah.
And what are some simple practices or principles, even, or concepts that you share, that you can share with someone who does have some of this? I know a lot of people listening might be able to relate to these habits, these armorings. Maybe they have a concept of, oh, that might be me, but I don't even know what it is. So what are some kind of ideas, concepts, bigger picture, but also some practical steps that people can take to start doing that for themselves?
Well, I'd say look at what is your habits? Like, what is your habit? So, okay, so when I get aroused, I do A, B, and C. This is how I breathe, this is how I move my body, and this is how I make sound or don't make sound. Like, I would start with that and be like, okay, so how can I do this differently? I'm going to move my body in this way instead of that way. I'm going to see what it's like to breathe more deeply into my belly rather than just breathing really quick and fast. I'm going to see what it's like to slow down and roll my body, or what's it like to make sound from different parts of my body. It's like you're really like adventuring your own inner landscape. And it's kind of like a labyrinth. It's like you have your one track that gets to like the gold in the middle, right? Or the illusion of gold. And it's like you want to start tracking different pathways of that labyrinth, because there's like prizes. I'm getting like video game visuals. There's like prizes in those different pathways. It's like, be adventurous in your own journey of self. Yeah. If that doesn't make sense, like really exploring.
Go for it. Yeah, it's like you don't even know necessarily what those prizes are. It sounds like but you just to go see. Yeah. And how about people who
totally.
Yeah. how about people who, I imagine that there'll be people who are judging themselves, or, you know, going, oh, I'm not orgasmic enough. I'm out of touch with my body. You know, and start either beating themselves up or feeling, you know, comparing themselves to, you know, other people who are so orgasmic and can have these crazy experiences. Look amazing. I want some of that, or I don't even want that. It's too triggering. Like, what do you have to share around that?
I think an important distinction to make is that orgasm versus orgasmicness. So let's say like orgasm is more of a peak experience. So there's the build-up of tension and then there's a peak, yeah? Or there can also be types of orgasms that are created through relaxation states. And that's communicating more with the parasympathetic nervous system, so the rest and digest. So the more you relax, the more you can allow pleasure and orgasmicness to move through you. Orgasmicness being a state. It's not a goal to hit. It's like the more that we just surrender and breathe and feel, we can acknowledge that we are orgasmic in nature rather than trying to like achieve this goal. And that's the real like downfall of the way that sex is approached. It's like there's kind of like this hierarchy of like, oh, I'm like so orgasmic, I can have clitoral, G-spot, or full body orgasms or cervical orgasms. And it's like, yeah, that's all great, but it goes against the point of like being actually fully in a bliss state of pleasure and in connection, and it can be distracting. And quite often trying to attain those things can create disconnect between if it's with another person and with that other person. Yeah.
And so you'd recommend exploring your own sexuality with yourself. So, excuse me, taking time with your own body before maybe working with a partner, or would you?
Yeah, I think that's an important part of your own evolution. You know, I did that for years when I was studying all that sex therapy stuff, and you know, I had the vibrators, and I was teaching myself how to ejaculate, and I was doing all these things. It was all very goal orientated, and it is an important part of your sexual evolution to go there. And if you have a resistance to going there, I would go into that resistance and play there. But it doesn't mean you have to be like that always. You know, I love sex with my partner. Like that, I don't necessarily really self-pleasure much. I could sit here and move myself into a meditation and feel the orgasmicness moving through me, but most of all, I love connection with another person. So, you know, it's just where you're at, and that might change again. That's okay. It's just, yeah, there's no right or wrong in the journey, you know. It's just like
What's your take on the like, I guess the ideas of like sexual kung fu, and, you know, having like muscles of you know, pelvic floor muscles of steel, and, you know, or like, and also the idea of having, you know, dead kind of muscle down there, and it's numb and I can't feel. Like, what's your take on all those kind of concepts and ideas?
Look, I think they have value. I think there's a lot of marketing in place with things like that,
like,
and it's not necessarily the beat. Sorry?
Like for good and for bad, or good or for bad?
Yeah, I mean, the marketing plays into the level of consciousness that our society has, yeah? So it's like the goal orientation. If we're going to like hit this goal, and you're going to have like the strongest vagina, or you're going to, you know, and that's all really great. Like, it's awesome. But what I have found is the deepest pleasure that I experience is through relaxation, and is through my surrender and my ability to be connected in my heart and my sex, and to allow that electric magnetic field to flow between sex and heart. And that kicks ass over any kind of technique of you know, strong vaginal muscles, or I don't know, whatever. It's like just through that alone, it's like the simplicity of it. And I think that we can get really complex. We can overcomplicate something that in its natural. But then, of course, there are numb in your vagina, then yeah, there is things to do to start to explore your relationship to that. But
what sort of things?
What sort of things? Well, there's different types of meditations, sensitizing your vagina or your cock if you're a guy. Like there's guys that have numb penises as well. It's really taking the time to explore your relationship through touch and through how you're communicating to that part of you, and really slowing down and unpacking what your relationship to that part of you is. But also what I found is that there's a lot of emphasis for women on the vagina, and there's not a lot of emphasis on the breasts. And for me, it's like the breasts are like the entry point. It's like you start with the breasts, you sensitize the breasts and open the heart and explore like what it's like to give energy and expand energy from the breast center, and that opens up the yoni, the vagina. Yeah.
So is it that's for you personally, or you found that's a repeatable kind of idea with the female body?
Well, definitely for me personally, and it just keeps growing more and more. But I would say like it's for all humans, like that blueprint. Like being able to sensitize the breast, especially for women, because the nerves from the vagina and the cervix come up through the nipples. Yeah, so it's an important place to nourish and connect and get to know. Yeah, and for men to get to know.
To get to know for their own breasts or chests?
No, for get to know the woman's breasts and chests. Yeah. But what's also happened is women have become like they've disconnected their breasts because they associate breasts and breast sucking with with children, and that's really unfortunate, because when a woman can feed a man from her breasts energetically, it's the most potent connection and cycle. It's like incredible. Yeah, and so there's a lot of kind of stinginess of like, I can't feel, or I'm like pulling my energy in, rather than like being fully devotional with your breasts and your heart and being able to like nurture your lover from that place. I would really recommend like any woman listening, if you're not doing that already, to start exploring what that's like to give from your breast sexually.
And so explore first with yourself, opening it up like with self-touch and things like this, and then bringing a partner in.
Totally, yeah. I mean, one of my projects is called Orgasmic Hearts, and it's called Orgasmic Hearts because I was getting ready for a Prince concert, and I was massaging my breasts, and my friend Nisha, you know Nisha, she had made me this little bottle of like beautiful oil, and I was like smelling it, massaging my breasts, and then all of a sudden an energy just started moving through me, and I was having this like full body heart orgasm, and I was laughing and I was crying, and I just could have kept going, but I had to go to the Prince concert, so it was like I needed to kind of cut it short. But and that was from years of learning about breath work and about my sexuality and Tantra, and then that happened, and that just exploded my whole perception of self-nurture and sensation and orgasm or orgasmicness.
And how you did mention breath work and embodiment and being in your body, and how important is the breath and movement of the body, and you did mention sound as well earlier. How important are these aspects with orgasmicness and coming into the body and really opening the heart and opening up the sexuality and sensuality?
Well, they're essential. I mean, breath is life, right? Each breath you're bringing in life force. You're making love to your breath, essentially. Yeah. So breath is important because it's opening up. It's moving energy through your body. It's putting your body into a state, and that could be an ecstatic state or a more like subtle blissful state, depending on how you're breathing. If you're breathing really fast, you're going to activate your sympathetic nervous system. So like get action going really. And if you're breathing really slowly and gently, that's going to likely connect you to your parasympathetic nervous system, more relaxed and gentle. So playing with that can really induce certain experiences. But breath is also really powerful, because the more you breathe, the more it unlocks blockages, and then all of a sudden things pop out of you, and you're freeing up your energy or your body. It's like it's great for releasing trauma and wounds and emotion. If you haven't been crying or laughing, or quite often like different states will come through. And the movement, energy can't move in a stiff body. So if you've got someone that's like stiff and they want to feel erotic energy, it's like, it ain't going to move, because all the muscles are condensed and holding in, and it just makes sense. Like how are you going to be able to flow into bliss states or ecstasy when you can't even soften? So movement really helps that, to be able to explore. And quite often, I'll meet people who are really stuck in their sexuality, and they'll have really stiff hips, and there's like an uptightness about them. And then sound's really great as well, because it creates, like, it supports an ecstatic state. It helps us move and flow. And different tones correlate to different parts of the body, and it's really about like creating song, so singing from different parts of your body in a really devotional way.
Tell us a little bit about that, like what sounds correspond with what different body parts?
Well, kind of, if you can play with it, but the say like you want to sound from like your perineum, it's gonna probably be a deeper sound. Or like, when people talk about like the womb, like the womb, people get really like deep when they talk about the womb, right? It's like, and every time I'm like in a workshop and we like start connecting with our womb, like the sound drops just naturally, without even like encouraging that to happen. It just, it's like this deep place that's calls like deep sound. And then when we're like making sound from up here, it's generally going to be a bit lighter. But you can explore making sound from every part of your body. Like probably like a month ago, I was in the park and I was like, I'm just gonna like sing to different parts of my body. So I was like moving my hand, and I was like finding like the song for each finger, and then like just letting this kind of flow happen through my body. And it's a really beautiful way to explore how sound can unlock and release and create states.
And so you found, have you played with that? Have you like had, whether it's self-pleasure or with a partner, being silent and seeing the difference? Or a lot of people be like, oh, I just don't make sound, or it's and then have them try it on and see how that shifts things. Maybe it's like, maybe that makes me too self-conscious, or there's these kind of concepts of what sounding can, it's like, it's not for me, or these kind of concepts. Or
well, when I first started on the tantra path, I was so fucking triggered by people's sounds. Like I would be like in these workshops and everyone would be like moaning and screaming, and I remember just being like, oh, they're so fake, they're just faking it, why do they have to, they're intruding on my experience. Like I was really triggered, and so it took a while of reconditioning myself to be okay with it, and now it doesn't even penetrate me. If everyone else is loud, I'm just now in my own experience and being in my own loudness, if that's what's going to come through. But also, like, sex doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes there is magic in the silence. Like I've gone into really deep silent states because my consciousness has gone so deeply internal. That
It's okay. Carry on, sorry.
Yeah, so sound can also, doesn't have to always, I'm not saying like, oh, you have to be loud, but it's like, again, coming back to the habits. If you're the kind of person that's always quiet, well, what's it like to expand yourself and play with what it's like to be more expressive? And perhaps if you're always loud and you're quick to orgasm, or you're quick, it might be powerful for you to go the opposite way and slow down and deepen your sound, or explore what it's like to be a bit more silent, So
it just sounds like expansion, like expanding, and is kind of the goal. It's like, all right, just see the full spectrum. Like if you only experience, like you said in the labyrinth analogy, it's like the labyrinth is quite large. See what happens when you go the other ways. Cool. And Orgasmic Hearts, can you go a bit deeper into what that entails, what that involves?
Orgasmic Hearts is kind of like my version of feminine conscious sexuality, i.e. Tantra for women. And Orgasmic Hearts is about women sensitizing and connecting to their bodies, and really like discovering the secrets held within their power centers, being the breasts and the womb and the yoni, or the vagina, and the vulva, and liberating themselves. So Tantra, one of the key components of Tantra is liberation, path of liberation. And that's why it's like you're always exploring where there is resistance. You can go into that. You don't always have to. If it's dangerous for you, wouldn't do that. But it's,
as in, how do you mean dangerous? Like as if it's traumatic, or?
Yeah, if it's traumatic, it's not like, oh, you have to open to everything, because there's this misconception that Tantra is like, opening. You have to open to everything, and if you're not opening to everything, then you're not liberated. And I call bullshit on that. Everyone has their own journey and their own kind of safe way to do things, and it doesn't mean you have to go and blow yourself open and with this another expectation that you need to be something, and that's dangerous. Yeah.
And so again, coming back to that question of what sort of are the common issues that you see, with people who are drawn to the work of Orgasmic Hearts, and then going forward, what kind of results do people see?
I guess like women come with a lot of body shame, a lot of fear around their bodies, a lot of anxiety around their connection to their bodies, and disconnection from their feminine in a way, from their flow. So one of the common complaints is women can't really get out of their heads, and they can't really surrender. So the work is very much about like surrendering to what is, and enjoy and feeling what is, without this kind of idea that you need to be experiencing something.
Anything.
It's like what are you? Yeah, it's like whatever you feel right now. Perhaps you feel like you need to cry. Perhaps you feel like you need to laugh, or be in a bliss state of pleasure, or it's whatever. It's like a medicine for whatever she needs, and we're discovering that through exploring our body.
And then someone might come, like you said, feeling a bit in the head, or feeling a bit of anxiety or body shame, and then through doing the work, then they might feel less of that. They might feel less anxiety, or more free, or more okay with whatever is it, and less kind of with that goal orientation. And
Totally. And there's layers to that, of course. It's like, yeah. But I mean, when you look at the women's faces from when they arrive, and there's kind of like this like fear to when they leave, and they're just like fully expanded and like, fuck, it's so beautiful. Yeah, it's like you can see the transformation is work, doing its work. So. But we really explore. We explore the radiant breasts, and the manifesting womb, and the golden pussy, as like these places of power. And that's really important to me, because there's a lot of pathologizing of these centers in a woman's body. I remember I was really disturbed when I Google searched the cervix many years ago, and all the images that came up in Google were cervixes with cancer. And there wasn't really any. Now there's this website called, I think it's called love your cervix, or it's something, and it has like a positive, it's really positive for women, but generally it's like it's sickness when you Google the cervix, and I just remember feeling like totally disturbed by that.
It is disturbing. What sells, or what captures the attention of the mass audience,
Totally. And that so many women don't realize that the cervix is like deeply orgasmic. A lot of women don't even like their cervix being touched because it's so armored and experiences so much pain, and it's actually it's the gateway to our power, like into our creative source of our womb. Whether you have a physical womb or you want to have children, doesn't really matter. It's like in that part of our body there's this deep intelligence.
And going about the process of de-armament, how would you say is the safest and most sanest way to approach that?
Well, breath, sound, movement, and then also having a tool, so you can have like a glass wand where you can really get in there and start to massage out tension. A beautiful colleague of mine has a project called oh god, I keep forgetting things today. Olivia, Olivia?
Yes.
You might have to cut this out. Yeah, I forget what her project is called. Anyway, it's an online course, and it's all about teaching women how to get in there and de-armor their cervixes, and it's really important. Like, for instance, our cervix really communicates to us. So there was a time where I was like, oh, I want to be a sex worker. Like, I had this thing, I'd never done sex work or anything like that. And I was like, and I really like to push my boundaries, I was like, I want to try this thing, I want to see what it's like, and I was gonna go and do it, and I'm sitting there on my couch, and all of a sudden I get this intense pain in my cervix. Like, it was just like this deep aching, and that was my cervix communicating to me, like, don't go do it, like, you can't do that, it's not going to be good for you. And when I listened to it, it disappears. So there's this deep embodied wisdom that we have access to, but often we're taught not to listen. We're taught to just listen to this, to our head. So yeah.
Watch out!
Yeah. So with the glass wands and stuff, what about, I hear often that, oh, that looks hard, and it looks like uncomfortable. Like, are there other options?
I mean, you can get silicone toys. I mean, ultimately, like, I've thought about this. If I was to design something like that, it would be something that was like hard in the center with like a soft layer on the outside, like a penis, like a penis, because it's true. Like, and there's different teachers have spoken about how it's not good to put something hard like that inside vagina, and that's debatable. That is debatable, and I think it's a personal preference. But I definitely have some resistances to what I put inside me, because it's very powerful and very strong in there, but it's also really soft and sensitive. And so if you feel, oh yeah, that looks too hard and that scares me, I would look for something softer. Yeah, go to a sex shop and find something, but it kind of needs to be long and often have some shape to it to really get in there as well. There's those crystal wands and stuff as well, but yeah.
And how about the kind of, I guess, darker side of this kind of sexuality work, or the tantra work? You see people often come and feel it like abuse, sexual abuse, or boundaries being crossed, or people being taken advantage of, or young innocent people, or like people being taken away on these tangents that essentially they're just being used or manipulated. What's been your experience with that, and what would you say to people to sort of help guide them to avoid these kind of this darker side?
Yeah, I mean, I had that experience when I first entered the tantra world, and I would say with compassion that everything that we're doing is very new. The conscious sexuality realm has really only come in since the 80s. Like, that's pretty fresh. And that where everybody is learning, and there's no boards. It's not like a professional industry yet, or, you know, and so there is going to be trial and error, and there's going to be violations and mess ups, like any area of life that's going to happen. And it's great what's happening now. There's a lot of exposure happening, and people talking about like where they did feel violated, so that we can all learn where those violations are happening and how to be more safe. But for anyone kind of stepping into, oh, I want to, you know, they have this desire to start to explore their sexuality more deeply, is do it very gently, because there can be a tendency where we get excited and we just want to like go in there and just like have the experience. And and the most important thing is to be really gentle with ourselves, and do your research and ask around, and but it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one, because no matter what industry, whether it's like, you know, we look at, like, for instance, I don't know if this is kind of relevant. We look at like the medical industry, right? So we have like this amazing technology today through the medical industry, and some of it's fucked, and the other bits I'm really grateful for. The history of the medical industry is like awful.
The trial and error type.
Trial and error, and I'm not saying that it's got to be like that, but I'm saying like we have to trust that there's an evolution continuously happening, and it's not always going to be easy and nice, and we can't always wrap ourselves in cotton wool, and sometimes things are going to be a bit messed up. And I guess that's where my compassion comes in, of like, we just have to be gentle with ourselves, and we have to be honest and talk and communicate and learn from what's going on, so that it can evolve to its highest version, being this kind of work, so that it
And so it's a compassionate kind of stance. And is it at all like I guess what you said, that was your experience, as in terms of you got swept in a kind of a darker side of things to begin with, or?
Yeah, I mean, there was moments that when I look back, that was a violation. I was in no way equipped to know. I didn't really know how to say no. I went to a cuddle party once to just say no, because I had to learn how to do that, because I was used to always saying yes. And that's something that people just need to realize, is that we don't always know what our no is. And it's a very gray area, but I remember when I first started to do this work, just having my mind blown, because it was so out there. And I remember I couldn't even think clearly, like my mind was cloudy. So I mean, there's a lot of talk around like learning about boundaries, and that's is an important level to, going to like a basic class on like, what feels like a yes or a no in my body, like practicing that. That doesn't feel like it opens me, it feels like it contracts me. Okay, so then I should just ease off, and I'm not going to take any action from this place, because it feels contracted. And give yourself space to like process that, rather than like, I feel contracted, but I'm going to blow myself open because I want to be liberated, or I want to just have this experience. Or but again, it's an issue of sensitization, because people are numb, so they don't know what their yes or no is, or whether they're contracted or expanded, because they don't even know what they feel about much.
And has that been, obviously it sounds like that has been a journey for you in terms of setting those boundaries and realizing having a clear idea of what is a yes, what is a no, what is a maybe, what is a maybe not. And for anyone, I imagine that this would, how you do anything is how you do everything. So like working with sex, it's kind of a charged area. around those boundaries, but also then just around boundaries in general. You know, what you expectations from friends, family, people, you know, clients, customers, so on and so forth. What are some things that have worked for you, and how have you applied them from not just this area but also the rest of life in terms of setting boundaries?
Well, the cuddle party was a good one for me because I went in there with that intention. I was like, I'm just going to say no this whole time because it's practice, right? And again, like feeling what has worked and what hasn't worked. So what I realized didn't work was when I got aggressive and I told people to fuck off, or I fully shut them down, or that didn't necessarily work for me. It just created more shit or more anger and more resistance between me and whoever that was. So a big part of my journey has been how to assert my boundaries and know and express what it is that I need and want with grace and compassion and respect for that other person, even if I don't feel like they're respecting me. It's like, how can I still stay in a place of respect for this person because they don't necessarily know? And I'm not talking about like if someone's trying to rape you or something, that's a totally different, it's a totally different thing. But I mean, like day to day, there's violations constantly of our needs, and how can we be graceful in that communication?
So
again, like it's the heart, right?
That's the mindset. Is how can I be graceful? How can I honor myself and this situation? Yeah.
And it's not always going to be like that. Sometimes you are going to get triggered and going to get angry or shut down, and that's okay.
Yeah, I really feel what's coming through there is this gentleness, and I feel that the heart, coming back to the heart, does that naturally. It's like that's the nature of love and living in that heart loving place. I don't see necessarily coming from a loving place or being in the heart being harmful at all. Like, don't imagine someone who's operating from the heart going and killing someone or manipulating someone for their own gain, or crossing a boundary. Like it doesn't. This doesn't feel. That's been my experience anyway. Coming back into the heart. So, in terms of
it's such a sensitive center. It's like. Hang on, it's lagging.
Sorry.
You're frozen.
Hello. Am I back now?
Papa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello?
Am I back?
Hi. Yeah, you're back. You're
yeah. Lost my train of thought.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to honor that, like, even the destruction can be of love. It's like,
hi.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, like life isn't just all lovely and gentle all the time. It's important that we can exercise that part of ourselves to be able to be gentle, because it's easier on our system, it's easier on our nervous system. But there comes a place where there is destruction or rage or a lot of chaos, and you can even just look at nature for that wisdom, like bushfires coming through, like as much as like they're awful because all of this like life dies, is burnt to a crisp. It also, there's also gifts in it. Yeah, it's like there's certain kind of seeds and things like that can only sprout through being burnt.
100%.
And so yeah, and I think that's important to acknowledge within ourselves as well.
Really powerful seeds as well. Some of the acacia varieties will only have to be at a certain temperature in order to sprout. So yeah, and that's super beneficial for for everyone.
Yeah. And so that's why I think it's important to acknowledge, like, yes, we can be safe and we can be gentle and we can be loving and we can be, put all of these like systems in place so that there isn't, sexual violations or there isn't hurt or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, things are still going to happen because that is life. And it's how gracefully we can handle the chaos and the destruction of life that really matters. We know that. You look at some of the most powerful people in the world, they've all had, often had something really fucked up happen to them, and it's how they've bounced back and recovered and been in grace that has propelled them into greatness.
Yeah, it's true. Totally true. Yeah, it's like the pain being pain and the shit situations being the catalyst a lot of the time. I feel for me, I've had a pretty intense, first half of my life, first 20 years of my life, 25 years of my life even. And that being, especially the first part, 0 to 15, for instance, that was pretty intense. And I don't believe I'd, kind of be where I am today and have the gifts and the kind of leanings and the concepts and be where I'm at in a space internally, mentally, emotionally, so on and so forth, without those tough experiences. So I can definitely attest to that concept being true for me, at least. And
resilient.
Reading a lot of biographies, it seems like it's the case for a lot of people as well. And I guess I want to kind of wrap it up a little bit, maybe. Thanks you so much for your time. I really appreciate you being here with us. And getting to know you a little bit more. And the final thing is, I guess, it's a couple of things. So I would like to hear from you what the future that you'd like to weave is, what that looks like, what that is like for you.
For me or the world?
Yeah, kind of how you see your part in weaving that future, and I guess for the world, that the ideal kind of scene that you'd love to see, and whether you or not you'd like to to be a catalyst or part of that creation. And if so, how?
I would really, really love to see more people stepping up with courage to really get to know and utilize their sexualities in a really sacred and loving way. Because what we currently have is a whole bunch of porn pimps basically educating the future generations on what sexuality is. And it's a very perverted and twisted version, very absent of the heart. So I feel the most important thing for people to do is really kind of push back against that. And by the way that we can do that is through liberating ourselves and connecting and being brave and discovering our own sacred sexuality and really going deeply into that part of our lives, so that we do create a demand in the world for more conscious sex education and create a different future, because at the moment it's heading in a pretty grim direction. So I'd love to be a part of that.
Does that look like a conscious sexuality porn pimp, or is it something else?
It's an army an army of people who are really deeply embodied in their heart and their sex, and that is has the ripples and is going out into the world, and through that could all sorts of creations could go. There could be conscious sexuality porn sites, or there could be it could be woven into schools, or the legal system. Who knows what could happen? But I know that is just so important. That people start to just be more courageous and stop and basically pull our heads out of our asses, because it's true. lot of people are just kind of going along and not dealing with their sexuality, or it's just kind of like, I'll do my personal development in business, or I'll go to the gym every day. But no one, these people aren't really exploring that part because, it's so burdened in shame and I don't know, whatever the story, trauma, and people don't think that they need it. But then this kind of these other realms, like people are sitting in their rooms watching kind of free porn and stuff, which is supporting the wheel of like the porn films and the nasty stuff. So, and all our kids are going to be seeing that. They are seeing that, and it's not good. So,
and what are some ways that, like, are there organizations, are you aligned with anyone who is doing great work and that you'd love to plug real quickly, or would you like to call in people who are doing kind of great work around this and connect with them and create that army, or?
I mean, there is a lot of different things happening, but I guess it's at the moment it's quite a niche scene. And I guess, like, if there's people out there that have access to more kind of mainstream peeps that somehow starting to bring that in more. I don't necessarily know who those people are. I'm just kind of like putting that intention out there that the more that people can get the work out there. And start having conversations. If you do go to a sexuality workshop, or you're listening to this, or you've heard some other podcast of someone talking about these things, like, don't be afraid to share that. Don't be afraid to start a conversation, because quite often people are more open to these conversations than we kind of think.
I believe, yeah.
And and to, like, really be in our courage to open up the conversation, because I'll end up having conversations with like random people on, like, at a cafe, or and I met a guy the other week, and we started to talk about, he was an older guy from Perth, and I'd talk about the porn industry and how he's got 3 daughters, and he was totally open to this conversation, whereas you could sit there and be like, oh no, that's inappropriate to talk about that. It's like we've got to start talking to everyone, and talking to your kids about it as well, and educating, and
you've got
time to open the dialogue.
You've got younger siblings, or do you have nieces and nephews, or do you broach these topics with them, and if so, how do you go about it?
Yeah, I mean, I try. It's hard in the level of consciousness, right? But just kind of planting seeds. So when my nieces were younger, I gave them these books on sacred sexuality, and it's it's just kind of planting seeds, and although it may seem sometimes like it's not taking effect, we just kind of have to hope that down the line maybe these things will just planting the seeds is important. Yeah.
Beautiful. And finally, I guess, what is the transmission, the energy that you'd love to transmit and share, and for other people to receive? I guess, what is the last, whether it's a message you want to share, or whether it's a question you want to ask, just to bring people's awareness to this kind of central idea that you feel is most important to you. I know it's connection with sexuality. It seems like connection and courage with your own expression of and exploration and discussion of. That's what it sounds like. But is there any particular thing that is really kind of burning kind of inside of you that you'd love to kind of get out there and drive home just as we finish up here?
It would be the heart, exercising our hearts. Like, how deeply connected are you in your heart, and noticing when are you like dropping out of that heart connection, and really like being aware of this place when we're communicating in the world, whether it's like in our work or with another person, or when you're making love, it's like how much are we present here? Yeah.
Beautiful. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Where can people find you?
ShaneyMarie.com.
Cool. Done.
Yeah.
Easy.
Mm.
I'll put a link in the description.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
Thanks.